you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. My name's Ken, and I'm going to be the guest speaker today. As you know, Pastor Paul and Ken have been on vacation these past couple of weeks. Luckily, they will be back next week. We've been blessed to have such wonderful guests filling in. We had Mark that really hammered home some information about respect and love. And Andrea last week shared about her personal journey, and she shared from the heart. And that's really special because the heart is holy ground, whether it's yours or it belongs to the person that opens up to you. Thank you for all of that. In fact, these guys have been so great, we've barely missed Paul. That's going to end today. So, let me give you a few announcements here. If you're joining us here for the first time, I do want to invite you after the service down to Pilgrim Hall, where we have coffee and cookies and spend some time in fellowship with one another. Our Mission and Outreach August collection, we are supporting child migrant services by collecting insect repellent, sunscreen, calamine lotion, and bandanas. You can also include individual-sized Kleenex, hand cleanser, cough drops, and lip balm. Catholic Outreach collection is drinks, sodas, juices, water, and more. Mission and Outreach also is Solidarity Not Charity. We're collecting hotel and personal size toiletries, water and milk jugs, and plastic grocery bags so that we can crochet the sleeping bags. The other announcements are printed inside your bulletin. If you have any questions about any of those, just turn to the person next to you because I'm sure they understand exactly what it means. Opening reflection this morning, I'm going to ask you to unlearn some things you think you know. You've been trained to think a certain way since you were very, very little. And I've asked some of the members to help me with that. And you have a piece of poster board in front of you and a marker. So I'd like to ask you to open that poster board up. And I want you to try to keep it hidden from the folks around you so they can't see what you are doing. I want you to pick a number, any number between 1 and 10, and write that in. Any number between 1 and 10. Put it small, put it small. Now I want you to take that number and multiply it. Multiply it times 9. Write that answer down. I see all these people picking small. Now, the answer that you have should be 2 digits. I want you to add those 2 digits together. Like if your answer was 42, you would add the 4 and the 2 together, and that would make 6. So add the 2 digits together and write that number down. Now that final number, that last number that you wrote down, subtract 5. Write that answer. Now, that number that you have, I want you to think of the letter of the alphabet that correlates with. Like 1 would be A, 2 would be B, 3 would be so forth. Write that letter down. Now, we live in Colorado, so I want you the second letter in the name of the city. The second letter in the name of the city. And write that down great big. Great big. Now I would like for you to think of an animal, a four-legged animal, any animal that begins with that letter. Spelling doesn't count. I have no respect for people who can only spell a word one way. Now I want you to write down the color that that animal usually is. How many of you have a gray elephant in Denver? Anybody have brown elks? I get elk a lot too.
I wasn't sure what color elks were, so I got an elk.
Okay, so why did that work that way? Now you've been trained to think a certain way, right? Any number times 9, when you add the two digits together, is going to come up to 9. When you subtract 5, you get 4. D is the fourth letter of the alphabet. Most people think about Denver Broncos. I do get some folks that talk about Durango. Elephant, you learn in kindergarten. Elephant stands for the letter E, and elephants are great. Or elk, if you live in Colorado, we get that quite frequently. It's because you've been trained a certain way. One of the greatest barriers to change is being able to unlearn what we have learned. We'll talk more about that later.
That's definitely fun. We are called worship. God asks us to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with them. I've been looking for the perfect church to do that. Any suggestions?
Church X is near you.
No, I did. I thought it would be perfect. But I saw the man who used to be my mechanic. He even sold me tires on my car. But he's been arrested for DUI. I did. I thought it would be perfect. But then I recognized the men who built my neighbor's family room. He was arrested for domestic violence.
Why don't you try Church C? It's one of the largest in town.
I did that too. I thought it would be perfect. But my daughter's old high school English teacher volunteers there. She was arrested for sleeping with some of the football players.
This pond has got lily pads in it. What kind of animal do you think it is? A frog! You are right! This is a story about a frog. And one day, he decided to go visiting the other animals around. So he left the pond, hippity-hoppity, lickety-split, and he got to the forest. And when he got to the forest, he said, good, he saw a giraffe. You know what a giraffe looks like? It's got a real long neck, right? There's tigers. We're going to talk about some of those. We're going to talk about some of the other animals. Lots of birds, if you like. But this time he saw a giraffe. And so he hopped up to the giraffe and he said, good morning, Mr. Giraffe. I'm a wide-mouthed froggy flash. What do you eat? She said, I'm a giraffe. I have a real long neck. So I eat all the things off the top of all the trees. So he said, oh, thank you, Mr. Giraffe. Hippity-hoppity, lickety-split, down to the forest and he got to the jungle. And when he got to the jungle, swinging in the trees, guess what he saw? A monkey, you're right. And he hopped up to her and he said, good morning, Mrs. Monkey. I'm a froggy flash. What are you eating? She said, I'm a monkey. I live in the trees and I eat all the bananas and all the fruits that grow there. So he said, oh, thank you, Mrs. Monkey. Hippity-hoppity, lickety-split. From the forest down through the jungle, and then he got to the river. And there at the river, there in the water, he saw a great big hippopotamus. He hopped up to her, and he said, good morning, Mrs. Hippopotamus. I'm probably flash for you. She said, I'm a hippopotamus. I have really round teeth, and I eat all the plants and all the seaweed that grows in the river. And he said, oh, thank you, Mrs. Hippopotamus. And he went hippity-hoppity, lickety-split, down through the forest, down through the jungle, down by the river. And he followed the river until he got to the swamp. And it was dark and spooky in the swamp. And there, floating in the smelly, muddy water of the swamp, an alligator. They were cousins. He saw an alligator, and he hopped up to her and he said, good morning, Mrs. Alligator. I'm a wide-mouthed froggy flash. What do you eat? She said, I'm an alligator. I have lots of real sharp teeth, and I eat wide-mouthed frogs. And he said, ooh, thank you. Now, why do you think he did that? And what was going to happen? That's right. So, the wide-mouthed frog adapted. Have you ever heard that word, adapted? That means you have to kind of change things because of the situation that you find yourself in. Right? Now, I want you to keep that in mind because sometimes you might find yourself in situations that you don't know really what to do, so you just have to do the very best that you can. Okay? All right. Thank you for joining us for the message today.
We're on to offer the responding to your invitation to a set of joy, where every seat is a place of honor. In this hearing, we find ourselves not lessened, but really joyful, truly honored, and deeply fed by your blessing. Amen.
So weigh in on the verses as you feel comfortable, and sing out loud on the chorus because you know that chorus well.
All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate people one from another, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. And he will put the sheep at his right hand, and the goats at his left. Then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer them, "Truly I tell you, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me."
Thank you, Julie. I want to share with you today some of the things that I learned while I was part of Colorado's largest mental health treatment program. It's not run by the Department of Health. It's not run by the Department of Human Services. It's run by the Department of Corrections. Some of you know my story, and if you don't, come talk to me afterwards. I'm happy to share it. You can laugh at me because of where I was, and I'll laugh with you because I know that I'm not the same person I was back then. The United States comprises 4% of the world population. Only 4%. However, we have 20% of the total incarcerated population. Colorado ranks 22nd in the country of lowest incarceration. Our rate is 341 per 1,000 people. The top 6 for incarcerating folks are Texas, Arizona, Arkansas, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and the number 1 is Louisiana. I can tell you that Florida and Georgia are also in the top 10. The crime rate in Colorado is down. Over the past 10 years, our rate was 305. That was the 2010 crime rate. The 2019 rate, which is the newest data that's available, is 2,972. So it's down a little bit. There are 23 prisons in Colorado, including 3 private prisons. All the private prisons are run by Core Civic. Core Civic was formerly known as the Corrections Corporation of America, or CCA. CCA was founded in 1983 by a group of Kentucky Fried Chicken franchise owners that wanted to make more money. So they changed their name in 2016 to Core Civic to distance themselves from the terrible publicity and all the lawsuits over the high rates of violence, sexual assault, and mistreatment of prisoners in their facilities. Colorado, the Bent County prison, which is still open, they had a prison riot there after they were served food that had maggots in it. I talked to folks that were there, participated in that, and some of the folks said that it was maggots, other folks said that it was mealworms that was in the flour, but at any rate, it wasn't fit for human consumption. I I was at the CCA facility in Burlington. It's now closed. And the things that they did there were, in the wintertime, you slept in your coats, because they said that if they could keep the electric rate down during the winter, they would provide a steak dinner in the spring. I was there 3 years, or for 3 springs. We had 2 steak dinners, and in the 3rd year we failed to meet the requirement, so there wasn't a steak dinner. The Colorado Department of Corrections has an annual budget for 2022, which is $967,271,654. The budget amount for 2023 is $993,354,000. That's an increase of 3%. Now, Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility in Crowley, Colorado, has 6 units that hold 1,018 people. The daily rate to house someone there is $111.31. That's an annual cost of $40,738 per person. In contrast, the private prisons charge $66.57 per day, so that's an annual cost of $21,658. The Kit Carson facility in Burlington was closed, as was the one in Walsenburg. So I said there are only 3 remaining private prisons in Colorado. But we also have community corrections. The cost for community corrections is $30 a day, and an annual cost of about $11,000. People on parole supervision cost the state taxpayer $18.92 a day, or an annual cost of about $6,924. Now, I give you all that information just to kind of get you thinking about the amount of money that we spend on locking someone up for long periods of time when that money could be put to other uses. So, I don't know if you know how prisons operate, but the inmates, they do the laundry, they do the cooking. They teach the other inmates. I was a tutor for the GED program. They earn 60 cents a day. Now, we have prison industries. They build furniture. They also do website development. And for a while, the DMV call center was housed at Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility. I think most of that's automated now, but some of those folks earn a little bit more money. They used to have a tilapia farm, and they were also raising shrimp. They had a contract with Whole Foods to purchase all of the tilapia. Those facilities were in Kansas City, and those people working there earned a little extra money. But then Whole Foods found out that it was way below minimum wage, and they canceled all the contracts because they felt that it was slave labor. So I want to talk to you a little bit about Jesus in jail, because most of the stuff I learned about God, I learned while I was incarcerated. I was in Kit Carson, and Pastor Jeff Smith baptized me on March 27th in 2007. It was my 51st birthday. And the baptismal fonts, they're great big things on wheels, and they fill them up with buckets. And you walk down in there, and they dunk you down, and then you get up and you freeze. Pastor Smith believed that he should have communion every single Sunday because he didn't know how soon he'd be able to get folks back in the seats. Some folks only came to church a couple times a year. Now, they have controlled movements in a lot of the churches, so not everybody can go, depending on what facility you're in. If it's a higher level of security, they only allow a certain amount of people to attend Bible studies. I spent a real short time in Buena Vista, coming from Durango. They thought that it would be easier for my family and friends to visit me in Buena Vista because it's closer. Buena Vista is also known as Gladiator School because it's a lot of young folks, a lot of gang-related stuff, and there are fights each and every day. It was the most violent place that I was at. Well, they had volunteer chaplains there, and they had different churches that would come in and do Bible studies on Wednesday. Well, each unit, they only allow a certain amount of people, 15 from each unit to go. So they post a list and you'd have to sign up, and then when the time came, they would allow you out of the cell. Well, it just so happened that the Christian Bible study and the Jehovah's Witness Bible study happened in meeting rooms exactly opposite each other. And there were never 15 people's names on the Jehovah's Witness Bible study. So we could sign up Jehovah's Witness instead of turning right, we just turn left and go to the Christian Bible study, which we did quite often in the few weeks that I was there. Private prisons have paid chaplains. They can do that. The state's been sued, and they cannot pay to have a paid position as a chaplain. So the private prisons have faith programs. They're usually called the faith pod or the church pod. And what you do, your job is to study the Bible. I was in the faith pod for about 2.5 years before I moved from Kit Carson to Arkansas Valley. During that time, I became the leader of the Protestant faith group that was there. So I worked with the chaplains who had to handle the Protestant, the Catholic, the Jewish, the Muslim, the Hindu, Buddhist, the Native American, and the Asatris. Now, the Asatris I'd never heard about until I went to prison. And they worship the Norse gods. Most of those folks are what's known in prison as the 211s. They're the white supremacists with the shaved heads, the long goatees, the swastika tattoos, and they're the violent control over the white population. There's a Hispanic population that's got folks that are kind of in charge of that part, and there's also a black leader of the group at each facility. The Asatris, they would get together on Saturday, and they'd get to go out to the yard and play football and take their lunches and have their lunches out there. That really wasn't much of a faith thing that was going on. In the private prisons, they also had the Satanists. And there were only 2 of those guys that met for their services, I guess is what you call them. And you used to be able to buy a satanic Bible. I have no idea what it looks like. But they removed that, I would say, around 2010. The guy that was the leader of that had hate and fear tattooed above his eyes where his eyebrows should be. He had lots of facial tattoos and lots of other tattoos. But he was a real friendly guy. He wasn't like some of the other church leaders when we get together for all the big meetings. When I left Kit Carson, I went to the Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility, and that Christian fellowship was a lot different. It was run, they had a chaplain's office, and they had a volunteer chaplain who was retiring. And so we just had volunteer leaders from surrounding communities that would come in. So we had 3 inmate leaders that were there. A man by the name of Ricky Servine, who's since passed, Dave and Monier. All 3 of them were employees of the chaplain's office. We had regular people that came in. Dan Robinson from Hook Ministries came in and delivered a message, and he was more progressive. We also had Mr. Grantham that came in from Mr. Grantham's passed now also. He came in from a primitive Baptist point of view. And so there was a big change in the way those services were operated. On 5th Sundays, the Mennonite Brotherhood from Kansas got up at 3:30 in the morning, left at 4, and they drove to our facility to do 5th Sunday services for us. And the Mennonites, there are no musical instruments, no electronic things, none of that kind of stuff can be used. No microphones, but they were very dedicated in providing the service. Now, inmates, like I said, earn 60 cents a day. If you owe court costs, you have to pay restitution on that. So you end up paying or earning about 48 cents a day. At the end of the month, you earn about $12, and that's how you bought your razors, your shampoo, your soap, your deodorant, and any canteen items. So in prison currency, these were very popular. These are Little Debbie's. Little Debbie was everybody's favorite girlfriend in prison. Whether it's the Swiss rolls, the honey buns, Nutty Buddies, Little Debbie that was one of the things that was traded. The other thing is a soup. So you could get a haircut for 2 soups, somebody come clean your cell for a soup, or a postage stamp. That was the other thing that they used. All of our faith communities, whether it was at Kit Carson or Ark Valley, took up donations. Things that the money that comes in, gifts from friends and family, or the money that you earn while you're there, you can donate some to the church. So, a lot of folks, people donated 10%. So you donate whatever you could. Sometimes it was less than $1, and you have to fill out a little slip. And then the bookkeeping people had to go to work, and it was really tedious doing things less than $1, but that money all adds up. I wanted to share with you some of the things where you really saw Jesus in action in the churches. And I wrote the date down. I want to say it was 2010, there was a horrible tornado in Hugo, Colorado. Pastor Jeff Smith's sister lived in Hugo. When word went out about how everything was going, things being destroyed in Hugo, they came around with a big cart with huge boxes. And people donated Little Debbie's, soups, shampoo, all of that kind of stuff, and they took several truckloads of food and toiletry items to the folks in Hugo to donate. I told you about the money that folks turned in. We always sent kids to Bible camp, to summer camp. And one day, the last year that I was there at Ark Valley, Monier was speaking that day, and he was so happy because he said, we were able to send 3.5 kids to Bible camp. Everybody cracked up laughing, and he didn't get it. How do you send half a kid to Bible camp? And then it dawned on him. There are lots of stories of people healing and recovering. in prison, because you need a safe place where you can do that. And whether it's through the church services that were there or through the mental health services there was a lot of healing, a lot of recovery, a lot of tears that happened, a lot of tears. The faith programs that are there were so beneficial to so many people. I learned that hurt people, and once they heal, they can change. And helping people to heal is what a corrections facility is all about. I was in Art Valley in September of 2012. That's when Mary Ricard was killed by an inmate in the kitchen after he broke the cable, tethering one of the knives to the chopping blocks. Officer Lori Gann was wounded and severely maimed for the rest of her life. The news covered that for weeks. They still honor those dates in September when they come around. What was never covered, though, was there was an inmate by the name of Patrick McGee that halted it. Patrick was in the same unit, same pod at Art Valley with me. He went back with another officer to retrieve some things out of the freezer. Mary was already dead, and the inmate had the knife to Lori's face. Patrick walked in, saw that, took 3 huge steps, grabbed him, and threw him against the wall, and got the knife away from him. By that time, the rest of the rest of the guards came in. They were kind enough to let Patrick meet with Lori Gann several times after she was out of the hospital, so she could give him her thanks. People don't know that Patrick was an ex-Marine, and what happened that day was it triggered his PTSD so badly. I spent weeks talking with him because he was having nightmares rolling off of his bunk onto the floor because it triggered so much stuff, but it was the beginning of his healing process. Patrick's out on parole and doing well. He's in the northeastern part of the state. Just checked on him. One of the other people whose story of transformation was amazing was a young man named Sean, who was he was in Iraq during the war. His PTSD led him to self-medicate with drugs, which led him to prison. Spent a lot of time talking with Sean, letting him get some of his things out. I want to share with you one more story, and this was one that happened yesterday. I was telling Creed on the way in, I was hoping to have this thing all fleshed out, not just notes, not just an outline. One of the most cruelest form of punishment that we have in this country is a public registry of people that have committed certain crimes. That registry has not prevented a single assault. The only thing that it's done is create fear. It's created discrimination for housing and employment. And it's created death threats and harm to the folks who were forced to register. Our apartment complex is mainly folks that are coming out of corrections and looking for a place to live. We don't charge a lot. Our place is never empty. Had a man that's been in prison for 20 years and in community correction for a little over 2. He rented an apartment 123 days ago in hopes that he could get out. When he rented the apartment, his case manager said, "This is great, that's wonderful, this place has been approved, you can move in, I'll get the paperwork started." A month went by. 6 weeks went by. He said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I checked the wrong box. Give me a couple weeks, we'll get a new date for you." He got the date, it was the 22nd of this month. When he moved into our place, he had to go to the Grand Junction Police Department and register his new address. All of his information, what car he drives, all of that kind of stuff. He's worked here in town for years. Yesterday morning, he got a phone call on his new flip phone. He's only had it a week. It was a man who identified himself as Detective Barnes from the Grand Junction Police Department, and he told him, "There is a warrant for your arrest because you failed to register in time with your new address. We need $1,500 from you today, or you are going back to jail." Bob panicked. He got a hold of one of his neighbors. He said, "You have to take me to my bank. Please take me to my bank." He's got a debit card, only had it a week. He figured out he got $1,500 out of the bank. The man was on the phone with him the entire time. Said, "Go to the Safeway store on Horizon Drive. Go to the coin me kiosk." He put $1,500 in the kiosk, entered the numbers and codes that the man gave him, and thought that he was fine, he wasn't going to be getting arrested. He came home. An hour later, the man called him back, said, "Your DNA sample has expired. There is a warrant for your arrest. We're coming to get you in 3 hours. You need to go back to Safeway and put $1,400 in the same machine." He panicked. He went to a different neighbor and said, "This is what happened. I need you to take me to Safeway right away." Some of you know Ron. He's been here and helped us here at the church. Ron called me and he said, "Hey, I think Bob's getting scammed." He said, "The guy's on the phone and he keeps telling him he's got to do this, and I don't know what to do." Bob is gray. He's about to pass out. He's shaking like a leaf. Will you talk to him? And I said, "I'll come over." So I went over, I talked with him. The guy was still on the phone. He was saying, "Those guys are going to get you arrested. You need to follow my directions." I said, "Hang up the phone. Just hang up the phone." He hung up the phone. The guy called him back 20 times. "Don't answer the phone." We went to the bank. The bank can't do anything. We went to Safeway. Of course, Safeway can't do anything, but they gave us the number to call in case of fraud. So we called the number. The number says, "Get online and do the fraud report online." So I'm the only one that has a computer, got online, got on the chat, tried to work with the lady, spent 45 minutes trying to give her all the details, and she said, "I'm sorry, we cannot refund your money." Reported to the police department, which we did. I don't know what the police will do. Part of it is because it's hard to track these cyber crimes. Part of it is because there are posters up all over the place saying, "These are scams, nobody will call you, don't believe it." And part of it is because Bob's on parole. So we're still waiting to see what the outcome is. But that's over 3 weeks worth of work, salary that Bob lost. So please keep him in your prayers. Think when you vote in the next few months, the mandatory sentences with really long prison terms, are super expensive. It's hard on families, and it's hard on communities because there are wonderful, wonderful people that have spent time in prison, that are out now, that are contributing members to society. They do the laundry for your hotels. They do the laundry for the hospitals. They work on your cars. They mow your lawn. They wash the dishes. They cook your food. They're part of the community, and they have a right to be here for the Desiderata. Thank you. I'm sorry, the next part, we're going to sing. And these are special songs that I picked today. Beth, thank you so much. That's a special song for me. It's time now for prayers of the people. Please come up, share your joys, share your concerns.
My name is Becky Reed, and I have a great joy to share this morning. Today, my husband and I have been married for 51 years.
Karen just beat me to it. I'm Elizabeth. I broke my knee last weekend. And show you my hardware later. I want to thank everybody who contacted me and offered to drive me around. I am ambulatory. I broke my patella, and it looks kind of like a stained glass window. It's in a lot of pieces, but they're together. Nothing is grinding around, which I'm very pleased about, and I didn't seem to have snapped anything, so it's just a bone, so it's not that bad. I am so grateful for my phenomenal raft of Uber drivers that offered to be listed last week. So I'm all set for rides and getting to and from work, and I walked here this morning. You know, I mean, usually it's a 2-minute walk, and today it's like 8. But I want to thank everybody for contacting me last week. That was so kind, and I'm okay. I don't have crutches, and the silver lining is no cafeteria duty for the next 2 months. I know. No white floors for me. I do have a concern to share. My mom had surgery on her ankle on Thursday. She tripped over a shovel months ago. Okay, you'll know better. Closed-toed shoes when we do yard work. We don't work with shovels and tools in our sandals. Unless you're Jan. But she scraped her ankle really badly, and it just won't heal. You know, there's no meat there, and there's nothing to sew back together. So after a few months of trying all these different antibiotics and different bandaging and different cleaning, and she had to have it debrided on Thursday, and they had to take it all the way down to the bone, and she was really uncomfortable. So just pretty.
I'm Andrea, and I want to thank Ken, who's so busy putting all of this together this morning, still had time to call me and help me figure out what was going on with the electricity in my house. So it's just incredible that he does that much. And thank you for his message. And then I have a little tiny concern. This is the first Sunday I've ever been here that Bruce hasn't been here. Does anybody know? Is he okay?
I do, I'll just like.
Okay, thank you.
Bruce's driver's license expired, and he's having a test, but he hasn't had it yet, so that's where Bruce is. And that's both the joy and the concern. I've had a report that Pat Malone is not doing well, that he's got a second round, I think, of COVID. Pat is in a rehab center in New Mexico, Farmington, thank you. I barely understand Colorado geography, much less New Mexico. But do pray for him. He's really having a hard time with it the second time around. And pray for his wife Joanne as well.
Okay, let us pray, please. God, we give you thanks for this day and this time to be together. We also give you thanks for Patelis that's healed. We give you thanks for anniversaries with folks that we love. We give you thanks for the folks that bring us challenges and bring us joy when they're in our presence. We're always grateful to be here and to be together. We're asking your healing hands be on those folks that need that. We're grateful for electricity when it works. And most of all, God, we're grateful to you. We're grateful that you love us. We're grateful for Jesus who forgives us. And in the name of the loving and living God and the risen Christ, we say your prayer. Our God, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. And all God's people said,
Amen.
Amen. Our benediction today, let us all try to live our lives for the rest of this week as Jesus sees us and not as the world sees us. Amen.
Amen.